Welcome to our PTE public meeting. I first would like to gratefully acknowledge that we are meeting virtually tonight from the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Seal people in the land now known as Kelowna, BC. Some attendees in this evening may experience strong emotions during our discussion, so I'll just remind us all to remain respectful, and of course, abusive behavior won't be tolerated. My name is Janice Selby. I'm the president of CASHA, Kelowna Atheists, Skeptics, and Humanists Association. I'm a longtime Kelowna resident, professional counselor since 2016, and I'm an author as well. Today, I'll be providing introductions for our speakers and facilitating a question and answer period after the presentation. This meeting has been organized by two groups, Kelowna Atheists, Skeptics, and Humanists Association, or CASHA, is a nonpartisan body that seeks to foster a secular community guided by reason, science, freedom of inquiry, and humanistic values. We are a community of free-thinking people who put on events, workshops, and conferences and work to promote critical thinking and evidence-based reasoning in Kelowna and the Okanagan for greater community and cooperation. Advocacy Canada is a powerful and respected force for change, working alongside the 2S LGBTQIA+ community to achieve equality. Advocacy Canada envisions a future where public spaces are truly public, vibrant tapestries woven with the diverse threads, the queer community and their allies, a testament to a society that celebrates inclusivity and belonging for all. This meeting will be focused on the need to reform the permissive tax exemptions for religious organizations. We are not against belief systems. We support the right of all people to hold their own religious beliefs or no religious beliefs at all. Calling for PTE reform is not an attack on spirituality, but an invitation for Kelowna's religious-based organizations to align with our shared societal values and contribute more equitably to our community. Our first speaker today is Kelowna resident and CASHA member, Nina George. Nina is the lead researcher for the project of PTE reform in Kelowna. And now I'd like Nina to take over.
Thank you, Janice. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm just kind of sarcastically calling this our Project 2025 Kelowna version. Our Project 2025 Kelowna version is different from the one in the US because we believe that property taxes should be fair for everyone. We are of the opinion that when we pay for an organization's property tax, those organizations should align with Kelowna's 2040 official city plan. The city of Kelowna has an equity and inclusion plan. And as a modern society, we shouldn't subsidize organizations that perpetually marginalize people. We shouldn't be allowing groups to leverage their tax-free savings to proselytize globally. It is 2025, folks. Our modern tax exemptions distributions should be fair for now and for our future generations. So what I'm going to first talk about is actually how the property tax exemption system works, the policies and the community charter. Okay, so the first thing that how we get to the property tax exemptions is the provincial charter. So places of public worship are statutorily exempt under Section 2020. And this exemption is for the building set apart for public worship, as well as the land underneath the building. So where people worship, that building and that land underneath is exempt by the province. And we aren't going to challenge that. What we are challenging is the fact that municipalities are given the authority to tax or not tax properties surrounding the sacred space, like the halls, where everybody parks their car, basketball courts, auditoriums, all those places are actually dependent on whether municipalities give exemptions or not. And recently in Rossland, they decided to tax both their churches' properties. And in Terrace, they're actually doing that 20% for everybody in the categories. Okay, so in Kelowna, the municipality policy here is called Policy 327. And that is the policy where all the tax exemptions are covered in the permissive tax exemptions. So the purpose of the Kelowna policy is the city of Kelowna recognizes the significant value of volunteers, volunteer groups, and agencies to the spiritual, educational, social, cultural, and physical well-being of the community. So it does say spiritual, but it doesn't say religion or political groups. It's just for spiritual well-being. And it means that we're trying to create a community for everyone. So a permissive tax exemption is a means for council to support organizations within the community that furthers council's objectives to enhance quality of life while delivering services economically for all citizens of Kelowna. So there's several categories in Kelowna Policy 327. So the ones on the right are special needs housing, society social services, parks and recreation, cultural organizations, and other nonprofits. And I just put in some examples of those. There's actually quite a big list. And those ones on the right all have to apply every year. And the ones on the left, and I included hospitals there, it is also hospitals. Those only apply every 5 years. And for the public worship category, they have to apply this July, and they are expecting to get a 5-year tax break. So this is why we are challenging it now, because we don't think that the present policy covers the changes of Kelowna citizens. And we are challenging why we're paying so much for some of these organizations that don't provide a real benefit to the community. So these are the questions on the permissive tax exemption application forms. The questions on these application forms are actually pretty easy to fill out. And I'm going to read the Glenmore Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. So describe the purpose of the organization. So they write, and this is very common for most of them, Bible education, assisting the local unincorporated association of Jehovah's Witnesses in carrying out their religious objective of preaching the good news of God's kingdom and teaching by means of moral and spiritual instruction based on God's word, the Bible. How is the property used to accomplish the organization's goal or purpose? The building is used for public worship at no charge and to organize the activities of evangelism in the community. Number 8, how many people are utilizing the property? So it says 150 for this particular group, which is on Glenmore. And how will the community and or participants benefit? Our Bible education programs are offered at no charge and provide spiritual comfort, moral guidance, and a hope for the future. Our meetings are held without collection and are open to the general public. Does the organization have any third-party agreements? They don't have any. Some of them do. Some of them rent out their parking lot. Some of them have space that they rent out. There's daycares, there's housing. So some of them do actually have to write quite a bit what they do, how they're renting their space or how the services are being used. But it isn't a requirement. You don't actually have to rent out any space to anybody. You don't have to share your building. It's not a requirement. And that's one of the things with the Jehovah's. They are very much an exclusive, high control religious group. This is the assessment for the Glenmore congregation. So their land and improvement is worth about $3 million. And so how it works is that this green you can see the building here. This is their worship building, and this would be exempt. This would be exempt, even if the municipality tax them. So it's just this part of the land that would be taxable if things changed. So just keep this in mind, around $3 million. So if you look at this category here, residential religious, $3 million is what it's approximately worth. And the municipality loses 7,500. And when the city decides how much they're losing, they only look at the municipal portion. So if you look at total municipal taxes lost, this is from the city, they estimate that they're losing 350,000 in 2024, and in 2025 it'll be 366,000. But the problem is that when they make a property exempt, all these other categories also lose, and they don't have a choice. So public safety, the library loses, the hospital, the regional district, the assessors, and the school. The school is one of the bigger losers. Just think about recently the school had to say they're going to raise the bus prices for the kids to get to school. Well, maybe if they had a little bit more money, they wouldn't have to do that. So this is the thing that's kind of deceiving when City of Kelowna says, "Oh, we are only losing 350,000." Well, actually, it's quite a bit more. And our calculations was the whole City of Kelowna loses about $1 million. And I also want to bring your attention to the fact that businesses pay quite a bit more in property tax. So for this example right here, I'm valuing a property at 1,800,000, and look how much they pay. So businesses, just think of your average coffee house, what they do. You know, people are gathering there, people are doing all sorts of things, creating community. A lot of businesses actually donate, they help people, they hire people. They also do a lot of social good. They're not private clubs. I mean, they're making money, but so are some of these organizations. So how does council approve these permissive tax exemptions? So what happens is that in July, like in this July, all of them will have to apply because the public worship ones are also applying. And they include their recent financial statements and a map of their property. And the city doesn't look at the donation lists. They just look at their financial statements. And even if they do look at all this, it doesn't make a difference. Because what happens is that they apply, and they don't, a lot of these organizations barely fill out the form because they assume that they're going to get this exemption. There's very little change in this group except when they sell their buildings or they change their names. So in July and September, the city staff bring forward their recommendations of approved organizations based on very vague criteria in policy 327. And so in September, council just usually approves of staff recommendations. And I saw in 2020 the actual meeting where they approved it. The council doesn't ask much, does not hardly ask any questions. The staff has already gone through it. There's the only things that change is if the public worship organization actually says, "Oh, we sold our building to another group." You know, those are the only changes. Basically, there's nothing that you have to do for the public benefit. And I'm not saying that these organizations don't do anything. A lot of them do public benefit, but a lot of them also discriminate against people. Or they're trying to convert them. You know, it's public benefit should mean that you accept people. And the PTE's approval can change from full to partial exemptions. If the city wanted to, they could actually change that exemption to a 30% exemption, a 40% exemption based on different criteria if they wanted to do it, if they had the political will. And Terrace is actually doing that. And as I mentioned before, Rossland actually just totally changed it. Didn't give them any exemption. So the last time the criteria for the PTEs was looked at was in 2006, which is about 19 years ago. And they only had three criteria, which they looked at, and which was prohibiting competition with for-profit businesses. So at that point, they said any daycare, office leasing, or any caretaking housing is now taxable. So the daycares and the office leasing is taxed at different rates. They ensured services and programs benefit the community, which that was looking at more of the nonprofits, like the recreational groups. They changed some of that, and they clarified the property usage, ownership, and housing opportunities, which they changed from 5-year limit to 2 years. So now if you're in the social housing, you only can stay for 2 years. Those were the only criteria. They did not look at demographics. They did not look at inclusivity. That was really the only three criteria that they looked at. And apparently they had a hard time making some of these changes. It was a volunteer group of people from the community that did this. It was a task force. So there was no examination on changing demographics and values since 2006. So we looked at several decades of census data. And if you look at the Kelowna residents who said they were not religious, they actually ticked it off. I am not religious. So if you look at 2001, 31%, 2011 is 42%, 2021, 54% say they are not religious. Now, a lot of people will also say they're Christians just because they like to eat chocolate eggs during Easter. Doesn't mean that they're actually going to church or, going to any of the other religious organizations just because they like to eat the good food during the holidays, which is what I like to do. If you have good food, I'll be there. So according to the 2021 census, the Kelowna population was 144,576, and we took off the reported attendance from the 2020 applications. So we were very generous. Like some people said they were, 40 families. So we would say 160 people. And, there is no auditing on what people write. Like for the Jehovah Witnesses, it just says 150. It wasn't 153. There's not an actual count. But anyways, we added it all up with all those applications and we got to 22,000 people. And, some of the churches say they're members and some of these just say the amount of people using the facility. So it's really hard to say. But anyways, just with that statistic alone, you can see 85% of the population does not regularly use these facilities. So the majority of people do not go to these facilities. It doesn't mean that there's more people not renting it, but so now we come to the 2040 official community plan. So back in 2006, they did not have this 2040 official community plan. I don't actually know when it was created, but I'm sure it wasn't before 2006. So I'm just going to read. This is something that has been around for a while, this equitable community, and Kelowna loves to actually market themselves this way. They say it in everything they do. We're inclusive. We welcome everybody. So equity defined. Equity is a fair distribution of opportunities, power, and resources to meet the needs of all people, regardless of age, ability, gender, culture, or background. To foster equity, local governments should redistribute the resources to those who need it most in order to reduce inequities. There we go. And who are the equity groups defined? Their gender, sexual orientation, and transgender status. Individuals can experience intersectional marginalization by identifying with more than one equity-seeking group. So, there's ethnicity, ability, there's all of it. I just read the red stuff. So Policy 9.11, equity in planning decisions. incorporate an equity lens into land use planning decisions and resource allocation in our community. So this is a goal of Kelowna, right? This is what they're saying they're doing. Resource allocation is property tax exemption. So if you're giving a property tax exemption to a public worship organization, it should be based on equity. They should use that as a filter. We should not be giving it to groups that don't believe in this equitable community. It's time to ask Kelowna City staff on how they interpret the PTE criteria. So now we just looked, okay, 2006, they only had three criteria. Demographics has changed. We have a 2040 equity plan. How does the city staff interpret it? Because it is them who interpret the criteria, and they're supposed to bring that forward to the city council. So in January 30th, we asked them. So this is right from the Kelowna Policy 327. Under Eligibility Criteria 3, it states, tax exemptions will only be granted to organizations that are a registered charity or nonprofit organization. So the intent of this requirement is to ensure that municipal support is not used to further activities of an organization. Okay, so we asked, does city staff examine the amount of public worship donations in relation to the criteria that municipal support should not be used to further activities of an organization? So one of the most surprising things that we found when we went to the CRA and looked at these organizations' financial donations, we were blown away by how much money gets sent out of Kelowna. So when these organizations are given this property tax exemptions, they're not supposed to leverage that money and send it out to their global missionaries and proselytizing. The benefit of the exemption is supposed to stay in Kelowna. Now, some of them do give out quite a bit to organizations within Kelowna, but they're also giving it out to other missions. So I pay my property tax first, and then with money left over, I donate too. So can I get away with that? Can I say, well, I'm giving out money to all these other places. Can I get rid of my property tax? No, your average taxpayer cannot do this, but why can these organizations do it? So would city staff consider the amount of financial donations given outside of Kelowna to contravene this eligibility criteria, especially this part? Municipal support is not used to further activities of an organization, which is what we're basically doing. They are leveraging their tax savings to do global missions. Under eligibility criteria 6, it states, will provide benefits and accessibility to the residents of Kelowna, specifically members of the public within the appropriate age range are able to join a club or organization and participate in its activities for a nominal fee. Okay, it doesn't say that you should be filtered based on your identity. It says members of the public within the appropriate age range should be able to join a club. So if you can't fully join the club, then this contravenes this criteria. Like, there's the badminton club. You're going to, if you don't play badminton, you're not going to join, but there's no mind meld involved in joining badminton. That's an activity, right? If you want to worship God, you should be able to go to any of these organizations, no matter what identity you are. So Kelowna residents must be the primary beneficiaries of the organization's services. The services provided on the property must be accessible to the public. That it says the public. It doesn't say some of the public. Questions sent to the city. Considering that 54% of the Kelowna residents are secular from the 2021 census, how are public worship organizations scrutinized in terms of accessibility and inclusivity? for equity groups. Okay. If the layer of accessibility and inclusivity were to be used as a filter, would city staff reject any of the public worship organizations who are openly discriminatory and marginalizes people? The purpose of Kelowna Policy 327 is to create community. It isn't to divide community. So, we did send these questions back in January 30th. We have not received any answer. So this is the last one. Under eligibility criteria 4, it states services provided by an organization should fulfill some basic need or otherwise improve the quality of life for residents of Kelowna. So I asked the question, would the city staff approve of religious organizations that are openly advocating racist views? So it wasn't that long ago where if you were a person of color, you couldn't go to certain churches or these public worship organizations because they discriminated against you. I know when my parents came from India, when they first tried to get my sister baptized, they were told they had to go to a different church because they wouldn't baptize my family. That was in the 60s. But would we put up with any organization that does that now? So is there a difference between racism and discriminating against the 2S LGBTQ group in our community? We don't think so. There should be no discrimination. On our website, you can go at the bottom and there's a map here. These little dots are all the public worship organizations. If you press one, you will see this little pop-up. Like this is the Glenmore Jehovah's Witnesses group. And this is the worth of their property. This is how much their revenue was. Charitable donations given was $12,699. And they gave it to, the Jehovah's never give it to anyone else but their own group. So they gave it to the Worldwide Watchtower, wherever that is. So the total value of all these properties is 326 million. 288 million is exempted. That means there's no tax. So the property value assessed for taxation is 38 million. So this includes their daycare, social housing, and offices that they rent. So for the total amount of value here, they only paid 240,000 in taxes last year. Oops. So at the bottom of our website, you can go to the data links used in our analysis. You can find all the data that we used to create our challenge here. You can click on any of these and you can get their whole application, their revenue, the property assessment. We are trying to be very transparent. We're not trying to hide any of the information from anybody that we are using to challenge this property tax exemption. So the summary. So just to summarize, the permissive property tax exemption. The public worship land building is exempt via the provincial charter. Remaining land and buildings are exempt via Kelowna's policy number 3027. For-profit property on religiously owned properties is taxed. 2006 was the last time the PTE was updated, around 19 years ago. Exemptions do not reflect Kelowna's diverse and secular population and the 2040 OCP. Criteria for approval are very vague and not enforced. And council actually has the ability at any time, and it says that right in the policy, that they have the authority to change, challenge, or rescind any property tax exemption. So that's it for me. Janice, I think you're up now.
Yes, thanks, Nina. So why change is needed? The rising cost of living and its effect on taxpayers. Where is the money going? Spirituality versus religion and politics, and subsidizing discrimination. I'd like to invite Kelowna homeowner Raynald to share the many ways Kelowna homeowners are burdened by increasing taxes and legislation. Welcome, Raynald.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raynald, and I'm a homeowner. And I just want to talk about the increased burden that homeowners have to bear. We pay more taxes, are burdened with more fees, and we fill out more forms and deal with ever-changing bylaws. We do not get a permissive tax exemption like places of worship. It is not fair, as Nina mentioned. Okay, I'm going to show you some examples of added work for homeowners that places of worship do not deal with. You do not have to agree or disagree about these tax laws, of course, but suffice it to say that homeowners are under more scrutiny than places of worship. The first slide, Janice, is the annual, or Nina's the annual property tax. That one, yes. So if you look at that, you can see that Kelowna's property taxes have increased on average 3.6%, while the British Columbia Consumer Price Index only increased 2.5%. This is averaged over 10 years. So next slide, please. Okay, so basically there's different, like I was saying, there are different categories that we have to submit forms for or pay for homeowners. So there's the annual property tax increase that I just talked about. There's the provincial speculation and vacancy tax of 2018. There's the provincials, there's a federal underused housing tax of 2022. There's restrictions on short-term rentals from 2024. And of course, there's zoning bylaws, revisions yearly that we have to deal with. I'm just going to read what it says here. The City of Kelowna's exploration of revenue increase strategies focusing on user pay principles, which increases residents paying more for what used to be free. There are now various fees and charges imposed by governments, such as development charges, utility fees, administrative fees, can add to the overall cost of home ownership. I have an example. So last year I had to get my water shut off for my irrigation. I had to change a main irrigation valve. And the city now charges $100 to turn your water off and on. And that fee was free a week before I phoned. So that's another added fee to the homeowners. And also today, I just found out that this is coming down the pipeline. They're thinking of taxing houses on the amount of storm water that comes off the roof of your house. It'll be calculated by the square footage of your roof. We're going to have to supply that information, square footage of our roofs, and we'll have to pay for that. So I'm thinking that religiously owned properties that get the property tax exemptions don't have enough scrutiny. They should get definitely more scrutiny as far as, we don't get any special treatments of homeowners. We just pay, and pay. And as a homeowner, I don't want to pay and keep paying for them if they're going to discriminate. Thank you.
Thanks, Raynald. Policy 327. So I'm going to go over the City of Kelowna recognizes the significant value of volunteers, volunteer groups, and agencies to the spiritual, educational, social, cultural, and physical well-being of the community. So it is about community. And what is spirituality? So spiritual is the adjective form of the word spirit, which comes from the Latin word for breathe, breath, and means the thing that animates life. So these little definitions are, if you just Google spirituality meaning, you can get all sorts of things. Spending time with yourself, relating to the spirit and soul, understanding the source and truth of one's existence, connecting to a community, connecting to God. So spirituality comes in all sorts of forms, and you can use religion to be spiritual, or you can be spiritual without using religion, right? You don't need organized religion. But for some people, organized religion is what they want, right? So there's inclusive religious spirituality, and inclusive religious spirituality creates better communities. Everybody's welcome at these things. You're not turned away. You can become a full member. And unfortunately, there's only 4 in Kelowna. And these are the 4. So is religious spirituality always a benefit to community? So if you are telling people they can't be part of the community, then I'm not too sure it is. Organized religions can also act as political entities, right? So they're not just about spirituality. They have a whole nother aspect to them. They want to control what you do with your bodies. They tell you what to wear. They institute strict gender behavior. They mobilize communities. They create culture wars. We just have to look down south right now, MAGA, that Trump is Christian. They send out people on missions to convert to a subscribed belief system. They influence policies in politics. They donate to anti-abortion causes, anti-MAID, anti-LGBTQ, and, you know, we have religious groups that don't even believe in contraception. So they legitimize authority. They want to get in power. So just look, Christian nationalism down south, Hindu nationalism. I can tell you every country that has some of this. Hindu nationalism, Buddhist nationalism, Sikh nationalism, where religions want to dominate and could have control. So there's religions who are inclusive spirituality, and then there's religions who act like political entities. So how do we know which ones are which? It's not too hard actually to figure it out. You just look at the public worship donations, okay? So this is just a very small example of what you would find. So the Evangel Church is donating to the Okanagan Valley Pregnancy Outreach Group, 6,553, which it's an anti-abortion group. They say that they're, going to help you with your pregnancy, but they don't want you to get an abortion at all. They don't offer that. And then the Bible League of Canada, Ontario, 3,000. This is just a small portion of what they donate. This is a mission that tries to convert other people into their belief systems. And when you export your very strict, narrow belief system, you're bringing your policies there, your anti-abortion, your anti-LGBTQ, all sorts of your Western ideas into other areas in the world. And why are we subsidizing this? Evangel Church does not pay any taxes, property taxes. They donate $32,000 to Summit Pacific College. I really don't know why they can't pay their taxes. Let's just look at the Kelowna Bible Chapel on Vinland. Their property is worth almost $5 million. They have 2 properties actually. Their total revenue is $225,000. Their charitable donations is $136,000, and none of those stay in Kelowna. So they give to the West Star Bible Camp $19,000. That's in West Kelowna. The New Tribes Mission, which is this one, another church planting globally, and the Mission Services Committee is this one is another global mission, $62,000. This organization pays no taxes, property taxes. And I don't know what the miscellaneous other is. They give out $444,000. This is just a recent CRA search of this organization. If you go to the links, you will find all the donations from all these other organizations. And it's a bit mind-blowing how much is leaving Kelowna. So it's just something to think about. How much money is leaving Kelowna, how much money we are giving to organizations that are marginalizing people in our community. And is it something that we really want to do? So I'm going to hand it over to Advocacy Canada now. Oh, to Janice.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. So I'd like to introduce Wilbur Turner, President of Advocacy Canada, to speak to us about faith-based 2S LGBTQIA plus discrimination in the context of PTE. Welcome, Wilbur.
Thanks so much, Janice. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I just want to first off start out with just letting you know that Advocacy Canada is a national organization with our operated out of Kelowna. That's been founded 3.5 years ago by myself. We're a volunteer organization run by a board of directors. And one of the things that we took on early on in our life as a nonprofit is we took a look at the faith-based organizations in the Okanagan region, predominantly in the city of Kelowna. And out of the ones that we looked at, and we looked at their websites, we talked to some of them, we looked at their literature, their doctrine that they have documented, and some of their sermons. And out of the 37 that are located within the city of Kelowna, as Nina mentioned, we only found 4 that were considered safe and accepting for the 2S LGBTQI plus community. So it's you know, not a big number when you consider how many churches there are. These were predominantly Christian-based. There are others as well, which we weren't able to get information from. So, you know, that's 89% have practices and doctrine that speak against being gay or transgender, in most cases referring it to being a sin. And, you know, thanks to the work of researchers that helped us put that together, and it was even acknowledged by a Christian nationalist organization in Kelowna called Action for Canada. And their chapter leader, Laurie Baird, actually mentioned it in their in some of their posts about this, and they actually encourage people to support the churches that we don't consider safe. So they actually want to encourage discrimination, which is really sad and disappointing. And go on to the next slide, please. So what is the impact of these discriminatory doctrines? So when we talk about faith-based discrimination, it really extends beyond places of worship. So people will say, well, if you don't want to listen to it, if you don't like it, don't go. But it actually goes out into the community. A good example is, you know, like people that have these belief systems that gay, queer, lesbian, transgender people shouldn't be involved in certain things like being teachers or in public office. They don't want to see us. They want us erased. They don't want us to be visible. And so we encounter these people in everyday life. There's people on city council. There's people who represent us in parliament, in the legislature, that have these beliefs. And it also extends to the home. If you talk to the folks who support the homeless people, the houseless people in Kelowna, you will hear that more than half of the children, I'm saying children because they are kids, these are people under 18 who are homeless in Kelowna, more than half are 2S LGBTQI+. And why is that? That is largely because of these beliefs. So they have parents who are ashamed to have children who identify as transgender or who are gay or lesbian or bi, for example. They're ashamed of it because they're taught to be ashamed of it. They're taught that it's wrong, that it's sinful. And I can tell you from my own upbringing that my parents, you know, when I came out at age 38, my mom felt that it was her fault because she had tried her best to bring me up as a good Christian boy, and I was gay. And it's not a choice. It's I was born gay, and people say it's a preference, it's a choice. That is language that's problematic because we don't have a choice over this. And if we did, I wouldn't choose to be gay just because of this type of discriminatory behavior. So it extends out beyond just the preachings in the church. The other thing too that I want to share with you is that this impacts people in the community. So a lesbian couple who've been married for several years contacted me and said they needed some help to talk to their pastor with a local church. So they had been searching for a church, and they went, they researched, they wanted to be part of an evangelical church. They liked that style of worship. And so they went searching, and they found a church, and it had a sticker on the door that said, "All welcome." And so they interviewed the pastor. We're open about the relationship. And the pastor said, "Yes, you're welcome here. Everyone's welcome here." So they started attending, and then they started attending the group Bible studies in people's homes. And they wanted to join the Alpha program. And when they started showing interest in becoming full members of the church, getting baptized and all those things, they started receiving literature from the elders telling them that they could have their homosexuality cured by prayer, and that there were people ready to help them. And they started sending them literature and books and videos on conversion therapy, which, by the way, is against the law. And so they were devastated. They called me, asked me to talk to the pastor. So I did. I had a 1-hour conversation with the pastor. He was not movable in his beliefs. He believed that they were right, and that we all have to sacrifice things for eternal salvation. And that was one of the things that this couple, he said, would have to sacrifice. So they wanted them to actually divorce, split up in order to become members. So when we talk to organizations like this, they use the term "all are welcome." They don't exclude people. They don't discriminate. But you can't become a member unless you conform to their belief system. So they actually don't welcome people. They don't accept people for who they are. They would have to change. And if you are a gay person or trans person, that's not something that's possible. You can actually hide who you are, but you can't change who you are. So that's just one example. There's many others. I could use many examples even from my own life where I was shunned when I came out by my church. I'm not saying all churches are like that. This graphic on this screen is actually an affirming graphic with the rainbow colors in it. There are many churches that are affirming, so it actually shows it's possible that you can actually accept and acknowledge people for who they are without trying to change them and causing harm. So, this is one of the reasons we're calling for policy reform, is to promote inclusivity and ensure equitable use of public funds. It's really imperative to reassess these policies. And we want to implement a more stringent evaluation process so that it can help ensure that only organizations who uphold inclusive and non-discriminatory practices benefit from tax exemptions. And there's folks that want to promote that the churches do good. And I've had comments on my own social media about this. It's like, "Oh no, don't take away their tax exemptions. They're doing good work in the community." Yes, that's acknowledged. And there are churches who are actually doing wonderful work in the community. And that at the same time, some of them are also discriminating. So you can't just wipe the slate because they're actually doing good work. You actually have to acknowledge the harm that they're also doing. So that's just part of the conversation that we're having here. And can you go on to the next slide? So, what is it that we want? We are asking that the City Council pause the 5-year blanket tax break for this upcoming application cycle, because it's every 5 years. And when we've approached some of the city councilors about this, they have said that, it's not really feasible to the work plan for the year for the city, for the council, and the administration is already set. It's in progress. So there's not really too much chance of changing that work plan to accommodate the applications that will be coming in July to be assessed. So what we're asking is that for this year, for the applications, that they just grant a 1-year approval, which they have the authority to do without changing anything. And that would give the city time to put this into the work plan for next year to do a review, because it's been, by next year, it'll be 20 years since this policy was reviewed. So we're saying that Kelowna taxpayers shouldn't have to subsidize discriminatory organizations, and the savings on property tax exemptions should not be leveraged to support proselytizing outside of Kelowna. As Nina mentioned, that thousands of dollars are going out of funding that could stay in the city, and that there should be an analysis of overlapping services that should be considered in the approval process. Thank you. So and I'll turn it over here to Janice and to wrap up, and then time for any questions. But if you see this QR code, you will see it on the website as well, the link to sign the petition. The other thing that you can do is you can write to the city. And if you write to mayor and council at kelowna.ca, it goes to the mayor and the councillors. Sign the petition. The other thing you can do is you can call call the councillors. You can talk to the councillors about it, and have your voice heard. So back to you, Janice.
Thanks, Wilbur. I really appreciated the stories that you shared there. Some of them actually are quite heartbreaking. And actually, for any of you who are more interested in Wilbur's story, he did let me interview him on the Divorcing Religion podcast. He has a very powerful story about religion and religious trauma and recovery.
Thank you for watching. We are trying to reform the permissive tax exemptions in public worship category to reflect the changing demographics and values in Kelowna. However, I want to make it clear that we are not trying to get rid of religious belief. We at Kelowna Atheists, Skeptics, and Humanists Association and the Advocacy Center fully support freedom of religion. And we have seen that these organizations provide a public benefit in the community, at least some of them. They help out with their religious food banks and social housing. And of course, helping people is always wonderful. Many of us do that. However, it doesn't take away from the harm that these organizations are causing people in our community. Under the guise of God, any of these organizations can continue their bullying and marginalizing people in our community from their pulpit, and they have that freedom. However, what we are demanding is that we should not have to financially support them through the Kelowna permissive tax exemptions. They can pay their own property taxes. We have a freedom which states that we shouldn't have to participate in their religion, and we participate in it by paying their property taxes. If they want to believe in a hateful God, they can do it on their own dime. We fully support all other religious organizations that welcome everybody and allow for full membership in their organizations. If a person believes in God and wants to join any of these religious organizations, they should be allowed to become a full member. Community includes everyone, and that is the purpose of Policy 325. So please join us in reforming Kelowna's permissive tax exemptions in 2025. We want fair taxes for a fair future. Sign our petition on our website, send a letter to City Council, or call your City Councillor. You can be part of the change. Thank you for watching.